Discover the amazing hidden truths of the Roman Empire, 7 surprising transformations revealed. Emily flicked through the dog-eared pages of the old book, her heart racing with the vibrant stories of a world long past. She once believed history was alive. Now, at 32, in a small Ohio town, she felt like an echo, lost and faded, drowned out by a chorus of indifference from her students and colleagues. As a passionate high school history teacher, she had poured her heart into her lessons, only to face a wall of boredom. Her students' eyes glazed over, their minds drifting far away from the tales she shared. How had it come to this? Just months ago, she reveled in the excitement of guiding young minds through history's vast tapestry, but now, the weight of standardized testing and rigid policies suffocated her spark. Every frustrated glance from her students pierced deeper than any words could express. While they scrolled aimlessly on their devices, Emily felt the walls of her classroom closing in. The sobering realization gripped her. The joy of teaching had become a monotonous cycle of tests, filled with hollow phrases regurgitated in board meetings that felt scripted. Lately, she had started to question her very purpose. Was she destined to be a lifeless cog in this towering bureaucracy? Pulling the dust-covered book closer, she inhaled the scent of aging paper, pregnant with the ghosts of tales that once inspired wonder. As she read about Roman citizens battling their own social crises, she found a flicker of hope amidst her frustrations. The parallels started to unravel before her, stories of bleak economies and lives upended, unsettling yet familiar. Rustling papers and murmurs of disengagement filled the air around her classroom, but she envisioned a connection. Her students, the marginalized, much like the past citizens she encountered on those pages. What was history if not a reflection of our own struggles? She had to fight for this vision, to breathe life back into her teaching and reignite that lost spark in both her students and herself. But doubt loomed heavier each day. That bold plan of hers to radically reshape the curriculum met a wall of resistance from the administration, who insisted on clinging to their rigid test-bound curriculum. "Stick to the syllabus, Emily. Don't complicate things," they pressed during their meetings, easily dismissing her cries for more meaningful connections. Each dismissal felt like a crushing weight, forcing her shoulders down, choking off her resolve. She teetered on the edge, questioning if fighting the tide was worth losing the job she fought so hard to secure. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the turmoil of her thoughts, she recalled a conversation with a former student who had shared that reading history through a personal lens shifted everything for her. That conversation fueled Emily's fight. It was more than just imparting knowledge. It was about leaving a legacy, carving out her place in the world. Suddenly, the weight of her grandfather's words echoed in her mind. Learning from history was crucial. They clogged her thoughts and twisted her stomach into knots as she faced a dilemma. Would she cave into expectations, sacrificing her values? She felt vivid anger rising, paired with a desperate yearning to stand firm. Just as Emily penned a note outlining her intentions to the administration, a shadow loomed outside her classroom door. The principal was coming, and with them, the crushing weight of a decision that could define her future. Is there breaking her or igniting a revolution in education? The knock on the door was light yet foreboding, jolting Emily from her thoughts. She tucked the note into her desk, her heartbeat quickening as she braced herself. There stood Principal McCormick, clipboard in hand, exuding a blend of authority and reluctance. Emily understood the message behind those eyes. She was under scrutiny. Would this meeting serve as her judgment day or an unexpected opportunity? Fear gripped her momentarily, threatening to derail her resolve.
Nevertheless, she met the principal's gaze with newfound determination, unwilling to permit the weight of conformity to crush her spirit. "Good afternoon, Miss Fletcher," he began, his voice devoid of warmth. "I wanted to discuss your recent curriculum proposal." Her throat tightened as she watched his expression. Would he dismiss her ideas outright as he had before? Yet she could also sense uncertainty in his posture. She took a breath, reminding herself of the passion that brought her here. "I believe our students need to engage with history on a more personal level," she asserted, her voice firm despite the tremors that sought to betray her confidence. "They should see how the past can shed light on their own experiences." His brow furrowed, the lines deepening like the crevices of a mountain range. "That may be true, but we have guidelines to follow, Emily. You understand that, right?" A surge of frustration pooled in her chest. It echoed against her commitment to her role as an educator. "I do understand, but I also understand what it means to connect and inspire. If we limit ourselves to rote memorization, we risk losing the essence of what history represents."
Principal McCormick examined her closely, and in that moment, she saw not just a man of authority, but someone who bore the same burdens as her students, the weight of expectations, the dread of stagnation. If she could harness that connection, perhaps there was a path forward. He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Emily, I admire your passion," he admitted, his tone softening slightly. "But you must also consider the challenges we're facing." Emily's heart raced. A flicker of hope emerged. Perhaps this was her chance. What if I could demonstrate how this approach could improve student engagement? A few trial lessons with my current class. The words spilled out before she could second-guess herself. He paused, clearly weighing her suggestion against the rigid structures he felt compelled to enforce. "And if it doesn't yield results, in that case, I'll acquiesce. Yet if it succeeds, we could reevaluate the curriculum standards for everyone. It's worth the risk, isn't it?" With a pensive look, he finally nodded. "All right, but your proposal must include measurable outcomes. I can't withstand another wave of complaints." Emily nodded, a rush of adrenaline filling her. She had just secured a glimmer of opportunity, yet the real challenge lay ahead. Transforming her classroom into a dynamic space for engagement required more than just passion. It demanded strategic planning, innovative lessons, and resilience in cultivating interest amidst indifference. Once she was alone, the daunting nature of her aspirations hit her. Would her innovative lessons resonate, or would they falter against the same apathy that once gripped her classroom? She felt the thrill of determination rise within her. She was invested and molded by the very crises that haunted her. With pensiveness cloaked in urgency, Emily flipped open her notebook, jaw clenched in concentration. Lesson plans cascaded through her mind, a blend of tragedy and triumph, stories that spoke to the heart of the human experience. However, just as her confidence soared, a new worry took root. What if her administration pulled the plug midway, discontinuing her groundbreaking method before results were in? As Emily began drafting her lessons, a sudden ringing pierced through the silence. Her phone, displaying a message from that former student whose words had ignited her passion. "My project from last spring had a significant impact. Just received a scholarship. Wish you could see it." A reminder of her calling. It underscored a truth. Seeds of inspiration took time to flourish. Determined, Emily stared at the blank page with resolve, ready to confront her fears. The moment had arrived to redefine history, hers and that of her students. Yet lurking in the shadows of her excitement lay the shadows of those ready to thwart her efforts. The time had come to face not only the bureaucracy of education, but the battle within herself. As she shaped her lesson plans, she realized she wasn't just teaching history, she was crafting a narrative of her own. How wide could those ripples extend? What changes awaited her in this uncertain field of battle? Emily's mind raced as she sat at her desk, surrounded by the remnants of old lesson plans and half-filled notebooks, a testament to her struggle for meaningful engagement. The clock ticked steadily, each second pulling her closer to the moment when she would need to present her first innovative lesson. No longer merely an instructor of dry dates and events, she envisioned herself as a storyteller, a guide through the labyrinth of history. But was she capable of it? She had no choice but to embrace her new role fully. Despite the doubts, she felt exhilaration at the prospect of breaking down barriers in her classroom. Her finger traced the edges of her notebook, filled with sketches of interactive activities that blended history with emotional resonance, debates, role-playing, and personal reflections. Each idea sparked with potential, but also reminded her of the scrutiny she would face. The first obstacle emerged almost immediately. As she raced through her lesson plan, her phone buzzed with notifications from the teacher's group chat she had long avoided.
With a sigh, she hesitated before opening it, expecting discussions filled with organizational minutiae or complaints about the administration's relentless reforms. Yet the thread was buzzing for a different reason, complaints about her newest proposal circulating among staff. What's this about Emily's history lesson? Who wants to sit through another touchy-feely workshop? One message stood out among the rest, dripping with sarcasm and resentment. Emily felt her stomach twist. The very people who should have been allies were already undermining her before she even began. She took a breath, reminding herself that these voices did not define her worth as an educator. They don't understand what we're trying to achieve, she murmured softly to herself. Yet doubt began to claw its way into her consciousness. Was this transformation too radical, too optimistic for a traditional environment? Shifting focus, she pored over the framework of her lesson, contemplating how to counter the skepticism brewing among her colleagues. She decided it would be vital to prepare not only deep content, but also a clear presentation of measurable outcomes, hard evidence of student engagement and learning. For days, Emily immersed herself in crafting the first lesson, a simulated Roman Senate debate where students would assume the roles of historical figures, engaging in discussions about pivotal decisions. Their understanding would be rooted in empathy, allowing them to explore perspectives outside their own realities. Participation, she calculated, would be the key indicator of success, a shift from passive reception to active dialogue.
As she finalized her material, she found a post-it note nestled within her lesson planner, remnants of the past, a small message from a student addressed to her when they had shared their thoughts on the curriculum. Thank you for listening. The bittersweet reminder fashioned a burst of determination within Emily. This was not merely about educating. It was about inspiring change and fostering an environment where students were heard. When she met her class for the first time after rolling out her new plans, a palpable tension filled the air. They had grown accustomed to the predictability of memorizing facts for rote tests, and now she was asking them to engage with history on a personal level. As they shuffled in, she recognized a mixture of confusion and intrigue reflected in their faces. Stepping forward, she felt an electric thrill of anxiety and anticipation. Today, she began, voice steady but infused with a compelling urgency. You'll become Romans. Together, we'll debate critical decisions that shaped our world, and I want to hear what you think. Yet, as she watched the students shrug off their hesitation, she couldn't shake the lingering fear. What if this exercise fell flat? The window for success was narrow and thick with possibility, and failure could echo through the fabric of her career. With tension crackling in the air, she readied herself, standing at the precipice of her ambitions. Would her lesson ignite interest and foster understanding, or would her dreams dissolve into the echoes of skepticism? As debate commenced, Emily's heart raced with uncertainty, grasping tightly to the hope that her narrative would take root in the students' minds. But just as the energy began to build in the room, she caught a movement from the doorway, Principal McCormick watching her struggle to lead. What would his judgment be? Would her efforts bear fruit, or was she destined to experience another setback under the watchful eye of authority? The weight of that moment pressed down heavily, igniting the question that loomed ahead. How far was she willing to go to defend her vision? Emily's heart pounded as she met Principal McCormick's gaze. His expression was inscrutable, a blend of curiosity and skepticism. She tried to steady herself, forcing her focus back to her students, who were now animatedly engaging in their roles. Senator Crassus, what say you? The question demanded a response, pushing Emily to suppress her own uncertainty. As a student, a boy named Josh began passionately about the financial decisions made in ancient Rome, she inwardly breathed a sigh of relief. Perhaps this was working. Maybe the fresh approach wasn't a total departure from reality. Yet lingering in the recesses of her mind, the fear that the lesson could collapse under the weight of criticism haunted her. Watching Josh debate, she wondered, did any of my colleagues recognize the profound shift taking place?
Were they even capable of seeing things from her perspective? Focused and energetic, students bounced ideas around, their hands shooting up in visible enthusiasm. Emily savored the moment. Still, Principal McCormick's presence loomed, an omnipresent reminder of her vulnerability. What if he deemed this exercise a failure? The anxiety crept in again, gnawing away at her confidence. With each answer given, each argument made, Emily reminded herself of the stakes. This was more than a lesson. It was her chance to redefine classroom interaction, to shift the climate from traditional lecturing to dynamic engagement, an essential move considering the frustration she felt around entrenched attitudes. As the debate rolled on, her thoughts spiraled, turning over doubts about the effectiveness of her methods. Would they be enough to revolutionize the learning experience? She had planted a seed, but would it flourish or simply wither in the face of staunch opposition? Emily, do you even understand the repercussions of this role-playing? An anonymous comment surfaced in her mind, echoing the skepticism she often faced. What if it faltered? Suddenly, an unexpected voice cut through her self-doubt. Yeah, but if we can see the past through their eyes, imagine how much we can learn. It was Mia, one of her quieter students, usually overlooked, now passionately defending the experiment. The earnestness of her tone sparked a new flame within Emily. The realization hit her hard. Her students were indeed grasping concepts and relationships that standard lectures would have never revealed. They were connecting, understanding, and perhaps, just perhaps, understanding her approach as well. This realization precipitated a shift in Emily's outlook. The lesson was meeting its objective of engaging students on deeper intellectual and emotional levels. She felt a jolt of inspiration. If she could maneuver through the skepticism of her colleagues and indoctrinate her teaching style successfully, she might restore her own faith in the worth of education as a vehicle for empathy and inquiry, igniting the curiosity in young minds, crafting a classroom where students could authentically explore their thoughts. That was the ultimate win. But just as she cleared her throat to speak, the door creaked open, and in stepped another teacher, Susan, one of the more vocal critics of her lesson plan. A rush of trepidation filled the room as all eyes turned towards her. Principal McCormick sent me to check on you, Susan said bluntly, her words slicing through the electric atmosphere. I hear there's quite a ruckus in here. Fear churned in Emily's stomach, but for once she wouldn't cower. This confrontation demanded clarity and resolve. Yes, but it's productive, she stated, steel threading her voice, and I think you might start to see the power in this approach if you sat in.
The tension in the classroom swayed with her words, a precarious balance between defense and offense. Emily could sense both her students and her colleagues poised for an unexpected outcome. How far could she push this encounter before it backfired? How could she ensure her lesson and her vision were not just dismissed or belittled? Caught in a storm of conviction and opposition, she readied herself for what lay ahead. The room swelled with potential as she prepared for direct confrontation. What did this moment mean for her future as an educator? And in the wake of such a high-stakes challenge, was she ready to stake her career on this battle? Emily's pulse quickened as she faced Susan, uncertain of how this encounter would unfold. The brief silence stretched, a tightrope of tension threatening to snap. She could feel her students' eyes darting back and forth between her and Susan, each glance a silent plea for her to hold her ground. Susan crossed her arms, an aggressive pose that spoke volumes. You think a little role-playing will really change their understanding? This is a joke, Emily. A flush of anger surged through Emily, but she tempered it with a deep breath. Instead of lashing out, she sought to harness the very energy coursing through her veins. It's not just role-playing, Susan. It's about empathy, about seeing history from multiple viewpoints. Aren't we supposed to nurture critical thinking? Susan scoffed, deeply unimpressed. Critical thinking? What value does pretending to be ancient senators have in today's curriculum? Are you really deluding yourself into thinking these games will prepare them for the world outside this classroom? The skepticism rolled off Susan like oil on water, but Emily clung to the undeniable transformation she had witnessed during the lesson. Compelled by the fervor of her students' participation, she summoned a quiet confidence from the depths of her resolve. It's not about preparation, it's about engagement. If students can see themselves in those historical figures, they learn more about themselves. Isn't that just as important? The room buzzed with a cacophony of anticipation. She could sense Principal McCormick's scrutiny, could almost hear him weighing her words against Susan's. With every challenge Susan issued, Emily felt her conviction solidify. This was not merely a lesson, it was a proving ground for her values as an educator. Susan pursed her lips, still unconvinced. And what happens when the bell rings? They return to their lives. Does this exercise carry any real weight? You're not playing history, you're playing games. But aren't games a way to reveal truths? Emily countered. If we only teach facts and timelines, we create disconnection. Students need to feel history, not just memorize it. By placing themselves in these roles, they're forging connections that could foster a deeper understanding of our own world.
The seconds dragged on, a standoff evolving where both educators stood firm in their ideologies. Emily's mind raced, contemplating the nuances of her situation. Was her passion enough to sway Susan or even McCormick? Did she have the stamina to dismantle years of entrenched attitudes regarding traditional teaching methods? Mia's voice broke through the tension again,
trembling but vibrant. "It's like I didn't just learn about the Romans today. I felt what it was like to make those decisions, how they affected people like us." That one comment ignited something within Emily. It wasn't just a rebuttal against Susan. It was evidence of success, a sign that her approach resonated. Students need to be seen and heard, to be active participants rather than passive recipients of information. "Right," Emily pressed. "It's about crafting a relationship with knowledge, something that allows students to carry these lessons beyond this classroom and into their lives." She felt a swell of determination surged through her, as if she had tapped into a deeper part of her mission. No more would she let fear claw at her confidence. As she met Susan's unwavering gaze, she understood that this confrontation was not just about this lesson. It was about her identity as a teacher. The moment hung heavy, and Emily realized the stakes went beyond her classroom. It was a battle for her future, her teaching philosophy, and perhaps even her career. Would Susan relent, or would this conflict only deepen? Emily's mind raced to develop a strategy that could reinforce her position without appearing defensive. She was not just defending her lesson, she was advocating for a whole new ethos of education. Just then, Principal McCormick shifted in his chair, an imperceptible reaction that sent a shiver through Emily. "Enough," he declared, his tone brokering no argument. "Emily, I want to hear your full vision for this approach, and I expect you to articulate it, not just to Susan, but to the entire staff." Panic washed over Emily, mixed with a sudden clarity. She could feel the moment turning into an opportunity, potential unfurling like a banner in the wind. Could she seize it? Could she transform this moment of tension into a launch pad for her progressive vision? Emily squared her shoulders, the battle lines drawn. Now was her chance to lay out her strategies. But at what cost? What unknown challenges awaited if she stepped into the light with her ideals? And most importantly, could she capture not just McCormick's endorsement, but the hearts and minds of her peers? As the room held its breath, she took a steadying breath, prepared to articulate her passion. Would this be the beginning of a new era in her teaching career, or the start of her greatest struggle yet? Emily's heart raced as she prepared to speak. The room, once alive with student energy, felt suffocating in its expectant silence.
Each face seemed to bear witness to this pivotal moment, and she was not merely on trial as a teacher. She was fighting for her educational philosophy, a perspective that aimed to breathe life into the often stagnant world of history. "Thank you, Principal McCormick," Emily began, her voice steadier than she felt. "The essence of my approach lies in engaging students on a level that transcends rote memorization. To truly understand history, they must immerse themselves in it. Role play is the first step in constructing a bridge between the past and their lives today." She could feel the weight of Susan's skepticism, heavy like an anchor, but steered by determination, Emily pressed on. When students embody historical figures, they do more than memorize dates. They wrestle with decisions, struggles, and consequences. They learn empathy, which cultivates a kind of understanding that impels them to question not only the motivations of those in the past, but also their own. The words hung in the air, pregnant with potential, each syllable a step toward asserting her identity as an educator. Emily locked eyes with a few students. Their expressions reflected belief and hope. It fueled her resolve, igniting a flame of conviction within her. What Mia stated resonates with the core of this vision. She didn't just learn about ancient senators, she felt the weight of their decisions. This is the key to unlocking their engagement. "We are preparing them to navigate the complexities of the world," she said, strategically addressing Susan's counterpoints while drawing in the audience. "History isn't merely about facts. It's about understanding ourselves in the continuum of time. If we can light that pathway, they become stewards of their knowledge." Principal McCormick shifted slightly, his eyes narrowing, as though he was mapping out her conviction. She was acutely aware of the tightrope she was on. One misstep could send her plummeting into his disapproval. Yet there was an undeniable fire within her now, a reclamation of purpose that transformed her nervousness into power. How could she not seize this opening, this moment crafted by tension and necessity? "To bring my vision to life," she continued, "I propose a series of collaborative projects where students dive deeper into pivotal events. Interactive simulations and debates will enable them to explore outcomes, perspectives, and dissenting opinions, fostering critical thinking in a way that transcends traditional lectures. They will not just learn about the Roman Empire, they will question it, challenge it, and most importantly, see its echoes in our society today." Emily's heart swelled with passion as she forged ahead, spurred on by her desire to impact her students' futures.
But in the back of her mind, shadows of doubt lingered. Would the others be as receptive as McCormick? Would Susan mount another rebuttal?
This was no longer just about a lesson plan. It was Emily's chance to revolutionize the way history was taught across the school, a gamble with her future. Her gut twisted as she rounded her pitch. If we start viewing our students not just as passive recipients of knowledge, but as active participants in their learning, we can cultivate a culture where history reflects their own experiences, facilitating both personal and academic growth that leaves a lasting legacy. She paused, taking in the sea of expressions around her. Some illuminated with curiosity, but others met her words with skepticism. The tension shifted. The room was alive with potential, but also fraught with judgment. Now is our opportunity to pioneer this shift in educational philosophy, she concluded, her voice gaining strength. But I need your support. Our students need us to embrace progressive teaching methods that not only align education with their lives, but also empower them for the future. Silent tension hung in the air. Would her peers embrace or reject this call to arms? As she held her breath, waiting for the murmurs of reaction to wash over her, she realized this was the moment she had fought for the entirety of her career. What came next could either solidify her path or crush her dreams. A voice broke the silence, hesitant yet potent. "Emily, I get your passion, but how do we measure success in this approach?" In that instant, Emily recognized a new challenge appearing before her, a challenge that promised to push her even further. Would she be able to translate this idealism into real, measurable outcomes? Would her dream resonate beyond just passion, demanding tangible results that could reshape educational standards? With fresh determination, Emily braced herself for this next confrontation, ready to fight not just for her methods, but for every student who had inspired her to stand tall in the face of doubt. Emily's mind raced, compelled to react to Susan's query, which hung in the air like a question mark tethered to her aspirations. Success measurement, a concept so traditional, so bound to formulas and statistics, loomed before her, representing a ticking clock demanding accountability. How could she advocate for innovative approaches when her colleagues were planted firmly in the realm of tangible outcomes? "Great question, Susan," she replied, embodying calmness while her insights churned. "I envision assessments that incorporate both qualitative and quantitative measures. For instance, we could develop reflective essays where students evaluate what they've learned through role play, analyzing their emotional engagement alongside historical accuracy." She was aware of the murmurings that followed her response, recognizing the blend of intrigue and skepticism on the faces around her. This was not merely about lesson plans. It was a query that typified broader anxieties within the educational landscape, an urgent request for clarity amid her idealism.
"And perhaps," she continued, drawing upon a mix of inspiration and necessity, "we can incorporate peer assessments and project outcomes, giving students a sense of ownership over their learning and encouraging them to learn from each other." While grappling with doubt, she felt her creativity igniting under pressure. The challenge to quantify her vision galvanized her to consider new paradigms that integrated both passion and data. What if students not only felt history, but also articulated their experiences in metrics that appealed to her colleagues' sensibilities? By fostering critical thinking through practical application, we would not only teach history, but also prepare them to think analytically and creatively in all areas of their lives, she added, her convictions growing more robust with every word. The tense atmosphere buzzed as Principal McCormick leaned forward, intrigued. He was evaluating her approach, a silent appraisal that felt like both validation and a new hurdle. If she could prove engagement could yield measurable success, it could solidify her credibility amongst her peers. Yet Susan's voice cut through her thoughts again, this time with renewed intensity. "But Emily, there's a risk. Students could misinterpret the context in certain simulations. Are we prepared to deal with the complexities that arise?" Confrontations had always made her uncomfortable. Their very nature felt disruptive. But now, faced with this very doubt, Emily recognized it as a gateway, a pathway to further articulate her beliefs. "Absolutely, Susan. That's precisely where our guidance comes in. We must preemptively address complexities and provide context, ensuring students are equipped to navigate and critically analyze what they embody in these simulations." She could feel her confidence surging, intertwined with a pulsating excitement for the curricular transformation she envisioned.
The prospect of helping students engage with history, not solely as passive observers, but as active participants, ignited a sense of purpose in her that she had never felt so acutely before. However, underneath that buoyancy, insistent doubts whispered in her mind. If she took the leap to actualize this innovative vision, would she be prepared to confront the backlash from steadfast traditionalists like Susan? Would those who clung to the old ways try to undermine her attempts at reform? The meeting stretched on, a series of questions lobbing back and forth, each one met with Emily's boldness, eliciting new ideas that reframed initial concerns into potential growth opportunities. As she navigated these exchanges, she had an epiphany. This discourse was not just about defending her approach, but it was also an exercise in growing her resilience. Every time I face these challenges, it fortifies my resolve, she considered, those reflections guiding stillness into her heart as she sensed the tide beginning to shift in her favor.
She felt emboldened by every confrontation, each one carving a deeper understanding within her of what it meant to be an educator, undeterred by doubt. As the meeting droned on, Emily's thoughts turned toward the implications of her new strategies, what they meant for her identity as a teacher, and how they could revolutionize student engagement. And with that burgeoning optimism came yet another wave of uncertainty, curling in the corners of her mind. What would it take to turn her dreams into actionable changes within a rigid educational framework? Were her ideas enough to transcend skepticism and rally her peers to embrace this new educational philosophy? The questions loomed large, a precipice of ambition and fear. It was clear to her now. She stood not only at the threshold of her career's most pivotal moment, but also at the beginning of a transformative journey. How far would she go to fight for her students' futures? Would she confront not only external opposition, but also internal doubts that threatened to derail her vision before it could even take flight? The answers lay ahead, buried in the depths of her resolve. Emily straightened her back and steeled herself for what lay beyond this pivotal moment as another colleague raised their hand, signaling a new inquiry. Would this moment spark the inspiration she needed to forge ahead into the future, or would it expose the cracks in her resolve, forcing her to reconsider her journey? The anticipation in the room shifted as her colleague, Mr. Simmons, spoke up, voice tinged with curiosity. "Emily, I appreciate your creativity here, but how do you see us implementing this in a practical sense?" His question cut through the tension like a knife, and Emily felt the focus of the room narrow onto her. "Implementing this takes a phased approach," she replied, choosing her words with deliberate precision. "Initially, we could pilot a few lessons in select classes, gathering data on student participation, engagement, and even anecdotal feedback. This would allow us to refine our methodology before broader implementation." The way she articulated her plans pulled her from anxiety into a realm of strategizing. The potential to validate her ideas through actionable steps made her pulse quicken. She envisioned a series of workshops, collaborations with fellow educators, and a gradual infusion of new assessment methods. Each detail represented a step toward her vision. Yet, as she highlighted her enthusiasm through potential frameworks, the persistent specter of Susan's skepticism loomed large in her mind. What if the pilot failed? What would that mean for her credibility? Would it leave her feeling like a pariah in her own profession? Sweeping these doubts aside, she drew on her earlier resolve. What if we also gathered students' reflections post-simulation to understand their perceptions?
This would not only enhance their learning experience, but also provide valuable insights into how effectively they are grasping the material. "Interesting," Mr. Simmons replied, sounding somewhat convinced, but Emily could read the caution in his expression. At that moment, she grasped a deeper truth about her development. To truly advocate her vision, she must not only engage her colleagues, but inspire confidence through actionable optimism. She recalled her own experiences as a student, feeling stifled under typical assessment grades, while craving meaningful engagement. How could she ask her students to pour energy into historical simulations without giving them a way to express what they gained from those experiences? Her eagerness to enact change had morphed into a melding of reflection and strategy. It was time to dig deeper into her anxieties, put them on display, and use them to galvanize further dialogue. "I understand we are steeped in tradition, but are we so committed to the status quo that we are willing to risk students' engagement? Shouldn't we at least try to engage in a conversation about evolving our methods?" The room fell silent, a pregnant pause that hinted at the gravity of her words. She felt a tingle of triumph mixed with vulnerability. By voicing her fears alongside her aspirations, she was balancing the delicacy of progression and resistance. Then Susan interjected.
It's admirable to want to inspire students, Emily, but there's still the matter of accountability. How do we prove that this isn't just another trend? Emily's heart quickened, the question colliding her spirit with her doubts. This was a direct confrontation, the classic battle between innovation and tradition. Susan, I believe that accountability doesn't have to be synonymous with strict metrics alone. What if we define success in ways that include not just test scores, but also engagement metrics? She paused, her voice steady. These new concepts should enhance the traditional framework, not dismantle it. Her words hung in the air, met with renewed murmurs. There was an underlying shift, a hint of intrigue surfacing. Yet she wanted more. What if she revealed something deeper, something about her past that underscored her determination? Not long ago, I watched a documentary about students who transformed their learning environment through creative projects, effectively altering their course outcomes. I want the same for our students, she continued, a burgeoning fire igniting. Embracing a holistic approach might even render the skeptics among us advocates, doesn't it? For every captivated gaze she noticed, her confidence multiplied. Maybe she wouldn't win over everyone today, but she would plant seeds of doubt within their skepticism. The road ahead would challenge her not just professionally, but personally as well. What would it take to keep pushing past these obstacles?
Could she be the catalyst for change, or would she succumb to the pressures surrounding her, serve as merely a litmus test for their tolerance of new ideas? As inquiries circled back and forth, one realization echoed louder than the rest. Her journey had just begun, but the reckoning was imminent. What would be the tipping point to solidify her position? Or would she falter when faced with harsher realities that questioned her vision? The next challenge awaited. Emily felt a palpable shift in the room, energy crackling like static in the air. The murmurs of her colleagues hinted at a convergence of ideas, but that was only the surface. Underneath lay a tumult of unease. Her recent boldness had stirred the pot, but would it boil over? Her heart raced as she awaited the next voice of dissent, the next challenge to her vision. "I admire your passion, Emily," Mr. Simmons replied cautiously, "but innovation involves risk. How do we know students will actually respond positively to these new methods?" Skepticism layered on like a weight, and she took a deep breath. Risk is inherent to growth, isn't it? If we don't step outside our comfort zone, how can we expect our students to do so? Her words felt like a bridge to her true aspirations, a call to action that anchored her focus. Yet the mentioned responsibility stirred in her mind. A part of her feared being exposed, of failing to deliver what she had promised. Could this hybrid approach truly benefit her students, or would it risk her career and credibility in a ripple effect of dissatisfied expectations? Susan's sharp voice sliced through the air again. But where does that leave accountability, Emily? Our primary responsibility is to ensure their preparation for future challenges. This wasn't merely a practical concern, it was a direct challenge. Emily felt the weight of Susan's question pulse through her. Could she confront her fears head-on, or would they fester, ultimately crippling her progress? She realized the answer lay in her own narrative, a story of her journey that could lend weight to her argument. I recently reflected on my own educational experiences. I struggled to find my voice in classrooms, often feeling like just another number on a roster. I learned far more from collaborative projects than any exam I ever took, she confessed, her voice growing steadier in conviction. I want our students to have that same opportunity. We can build a method that nurtures their voices. The atmosphere shifted. Startled expressions and raised eyebrows replaced detached skepticism. Something clicked for some of her colleagues. For a brief moment, she glimpsed their empathy, an understanding glimmering just beneath the surface. Of course, we need to ensure students are accountable for their learning, but we can't overlook the importance of engagement and passion, she pressed, determination infusing her words.
We might redefine success, not just in traditional marks, but in how they feel about learning itself. As Emily spoke, she recognized her developing resilience. With each rebuttal, she was not merely defending a method, but promoting a philosophy. The act of sharing her truth fortified her resolve, reinforcing both her vision and her identity as an educator. But she couldn't shake the lingering specter of doubt. What if the school board rejected her pilot proposal? What if their fear of change led them to silence her creative pursuits? In that moment, clarity struck. Emily realized her confrontation with Susan and others wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. These interactions reflected her ongoing battle with self-doubt. In seeking validation, she invited scrutiny, but perhaps that scrutiny would also cultivate deeper confidence. Still, she felt unmoored.
If these discussions continued, would she grow stronger in her beliefs or become paralyzed by the judgments of those around her? What foundation did she need to make this leap into uncertainty a catalyst for her own professional maturation? With newfound determination coursing through her, Emily looked around the room, gauging her colleagues' expressions. A flicker of something more meaningful rushed through the air, a promise that maybe, just maybe, she could rally their support. As the debate swirled again, her heart raced in tandem with her thoughts. Where would this all take her? Would she find the courage to persist in her ideals, or would the shadows of doubt once again pull her back? The stage was set for significant confrontation, and it was apparent to her choices lay ahead that would define her path. What monumental decision loomed just around the corner that could either consolidate her standing or fracture her budding ambition? Emily stood at the crossroads of her teaching journey, every heartbeat reverberating with anticipation and anxiety. As her colleagues continued to discuss the merits of her proposed curriculum changes, she sensed a gradual shift in the air, a willingness to question the status quo that once felt impenetrable. This remarkable moment resulted from her unyielding resolve to connect history with her students' lives, but now it was time for her to seal the pact with her instincts. "These methods aren't just about engagement," she interjected, gathering the energy of the room in her voice. "They're about fostering a generation of critical thinkers, future leaders who understand not only what has happened, but can also appreciate why it matters." The air crackled as her renewed vigor sent ripples through the room. It was imperative for Emily to monitor the responses. She could sense the curiosities flickering just beneath the surface of skeptical expressions. With an unshakable confidence now anchored in her core, she pressed ahead.
I propose we pilot these lessons for a semester, integrating assessments that measure not just participation, but deeper reflections on their understanding and how it applies to their own experiences. Imagine students engaging with history and then articulating how those lessons shape their perspectives on the present. The murmurs around her transformed from hesitancy into intrigue. It was messy, it was uncertain, but it was also full of potential. Emily's posture straightened, fueled by a rush of inspiration that surged through her veins. Principal McCormick leaned forward, keenly interested, his previous skepticism weakening in the face of her clear devotion. "Emily, perhaps you're onto something here. Show us how you can bridge those outcomes with our curriculum standards. If we can see tangible results through your innovative methods, then perhaps this change can take root." A jolt of exhilaration coursed through Emily. His words provided robust validation, a crucial turning point in her trajectory. It clicked in her mind. She could craft a path forward, merging creativity with accountability while championing her love of teaching. Challenging traditions was no small feat, yet her longing for transformation was as strong as the initial feelings of doubt that had once paralyzed her. She realized that the battle against rigid structures wasn't just external. She had to convince herself that she could embrace this role. She had to believe her voice mattered. As the meeting continued, she navigated every remaining doubt with clarity, articulating how collaboration and engagement would allow students to explore the complexities of their world. Within her, a revolution was igniting, not just her classroom's ethos, but her identity as an educator defined by action. In her strategies, Emily found purpose. She outlined partnerships with fellow teachers to share insights, ensuring their combined expertise could yield rich, measurable outcomes. Encouraged by the backing of Principal McCormick, she could feel the winds of change leaning in her favor. As days passed, Emily dove deeper into her lessons, meticulously refining each detail, passionately determined to see her vision realized. She prepared a framework that included student interviews and peer evaluations to provide comprehensive feedback on the learning experience. Authentic participation wasn't just her aim, it was the cornerstone of her pedagogical philosophy. Finally, after weeks of tireless preparation, the day arrived for the pilot lesson. Emily stood before her class, brimming with solid confidence, an embodiment of the transformation she had pursued. "Today, we embark on an exciting journey," she began, her voice steady and assured. "You won't just learn about ancient Rome, you'll become part of its legacy. Your task is to debate as Romans did, to understand their choices, and how they might relate to the decisions we face today."
As her students engaged, the energy in the room bubbled with enthusiasm. Participation surged. Each argument blossomed from a place of connection, a personal stake in history made relevant. Emily's heart soared as she witnessed students connecting emotionally with the past. The feeling was transformative, hers and theirs. Weeks rolled into months, and tangible results began to surface. Students not only became engrossed in their historical studies, they also began achieving higher engagement scores. Her class fostered a climate where learning felt vibrant, alive, and applicable to their reality.
No longer just passive observers, they had become active participants in the rich tapestry of their own education. Then came the recognition she had long desired. At the semester's end, Principal McCormick organized a meeting where Emily presented her findings, showcasing the measurable success of her approach. The attendees flooded her with praise, colleagues expressing how they felt inspired by her methodology. The deep-seated skepticism that had once induced panic in her pulse was replaced by a profound sense of achievement. She earned not only their respect, but also her confidence, re-establishing her place as a worthy innovator in education. With her reputation solidified, Emily left behind the echoes of doubt and unease. She had conquered the challenges that once loomed large. Her classroom breathed life back into history with every lesson, igniting a passion for learning in her students that would resonate long after they left her room. And as she looked forward to the future, a sense of fulfillment washed over her like a refreshing tide. She had crafted a personal narrative of growth that transformed her, proving that the echoes of a passionate educator could indeed resonate through time. The classroom no longer felt like a battleground. It had become a home, one where every student could connect with their historical roots, and where Emily could realize her dream of shaping young minds. And with that vision, a new chapter awaited. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Everything helps. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. You need to subscribe now. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.